So the real question is, how can I, as a mom, a wife, an entrepreneur, a health expert, a personal development guru, but also as a woman who has struggled to see her worth, her value, and find her joy, who is now living a 4-dimensional life in body, fulfillment, relationships, and business, help you, a woman who is possibly struggling with these things also, thrive to your full potential? That is exactly what I am talking about today. I am your host, Dr. Amelia Rodrock. Welcome to Transforming Self Podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to be here and to chat with you about what I want to talk about today. So if any of you follow me on YouTube, you can search Amelia Rodrock on YouTube and subscribe to my channel. But if any of you follow me on YouTube, I posted a video the other day about triggers. And I feel like this is a really important topic to talk about because people are being triggered a lot right now. And I don't know when you're going to be listening to this podcast. So maybe it's soon, like before the election, right after the election. Maybe it's way past 2020 and this will be a distant memory for you. But even if it is a distant memory for you, I imagine you all know the chaos that is happening in a lot of people's lives right now. And really in the United States, in our country, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of hate and anger. And there's a lot of people who are feeling attacked and being attacked. And it's not okay. And, it's causing a lot of people to be triggered. And I'm there with you. I have been triggered by a lot of things. I'm pretty good at dealing with my triggers. I have done a lot of work around triggers and how to deal with them and how to push past them, how to change my internal dialogue so they don't trigger me anymore. But, I still get triggered sometimes. And I was triggered last weekend and it sucked. It didn't make me feel very good. And even if you're someone who kind of likes conflict and likes being a keyboard warrior or really, like responding with people on Facebook with a lot of, facts and statistics and articles and just your personal beliefs and things like that, I imagine that when that's all said and done, you don't feel very good about what had just happened or about yourself, or maybe now about the other person. So, triggers are something that we're always going to have. We can't, totally never have a trigger. That's, not the way life works. We will always have triggers in our life. It's how you respond to those triggers. That's what sets you apart from other people. That's what makes you great, is how you respond to triggers. And honestly, the trigger last weekend for me, I did not respond very well. I kind of attacked. I got personal. I said something that wasn't very nice. And I know it wasn't very nice. And as soon as I said it, I knew it wasn't very nice. And I apologized for it later. But it's still, those words linger. And, I'm not going to get into what the trigger was or why it happened. I will tell you alcohol was involved. And, usually with the best triggers, alcohol seems to play a smidge of a part because when you're not drinking, you have a little more control over your mouth. You have a little more control over what you're thinking. But when you start drinking, when you add alcohol to the mix, then you start to lose that control. You start to lose your inhibitions and you will say things that you don't mean. So it happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to people who've worked years and years and years and years and years to not have triggers and to not be triggered by those triggers is really the right thing to say. But it still happens. And learning to recognize when you're starting to feel triggered and learning to recognize maybe the people in your life who trigger you the most or the people, the situations in life that trigger you so you can avoid that, is something that I feel like is pretty important. So what is a trigger? Again, if you listen to my YouTube video, which was just a little short segment about triggers, you heard kind of what I said about triggers and, what they are in our minds. So triggers really start in the brain. It's all in the brain. So you have your amygdala. Your amygdala is the emotional part of your brain. It's responsible for emotional responses. Then you have your prefrontal cortex. That is the rational part of your brain. It's responsible for good judgment, for rational thinking and thought. So these two structures in your brain have an inverse relationship. So when one of them is high, the other one is low, and vice versa. So when you get triggered, so when somebody is coming at you, pushing you, bullying you, saying things that you don't agree with, trying to make you see their side, even if you don't want to, you start to get triggered. And for me, that trigger starts just very low, very surface. I just start getting a little quiet. I feel it. I feel it right here in my heart. I just feel it in my chest, and I know what's happening. And then the more I'm pushed, the more that feeling raises and raises and raises. And for me, I withdraw. I don't talk. I don't engage. I'm not a big engager. I don't really like confrontation, so I hold it in. And if I didn't do that, maybe it would be better for me. Maybe if I said like, no, here's what I think, here's what I believe. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're right. I'm just saying this is me, and you can't push you on me. But I don't do that. I just let it fester, and I feel it, and I get angry, and I get withdrawn. And I feel like I hunch my shoulders forward and draw in my chest. I cross my arms. I close my body off. My posture is very closed. I get quiet. My jaw sets, my lips purse together, or whatever that's called. And I just, I try to draw in on myself, and then I can't anymore. And then I word vomit something I don't mean. Then I explode. But I know when I'm getting triggered, I can feel it. And I've gotten really good at removing myself from those situations. I've gotten really good at saying, no, not going to happen. When my husband and I, which we don't argue very often, but when we do, and when I am 100% aware of what's going on, I say, nope, not going to do it. I'm not going to argue about this. I'm not going to talk about this right now. I'm going to go to bed, or I'm going to go take a bath, or I'm going to leave. I remove myself from the situation. It hasn't always been like that. And if you've listened to I'm not sure what episode it was, but some of my previous podcasts, I talk about how I used to engage. I used to fight. I used to, block him off, get in his way, not allow him to leave until he engaged with me because I could not control myself. Now I can, and because I had to be right. I needed to be right with him. I needed him to hear me, or what I perceived as him hearing me, because he wasn't hearing me when I acted like that. And I needed to be right. So I engaged and I engaged and I engaged, and I fought, and I was mad and pissy and angry and rude and mean because I needed to be right, and I needed him to hear me, and I had to have that happen. You know what? I don't need to be right anymore. I don't care. Ultimately, it's what I feel. Ultimately, if I feel like I'm right, and I feel like I'm justified in something I say, do, or believe, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I don't care. And that's what's happening so much today, is people think they are right and justified, and what they feel is the thing that people should feel. And if you don't believe or feel or do what they do or say, then you are against them, when it's not personal at all. Just because I believe different than some people, it's not personal. It's my beliefs. It's my experiences. And I'm allowed to have those. Those are my beliefs and my experiences. And as a society, as a population of people, we are making ourselves right and more important than everybody else. We are making ourselves and our beliefs more important than everybody else. We won't take the time to hear another side. It's them or us. You're either for us or against us. It's black and white. And I don't mean racially black and white. I mean black and white. There's no gray. And that's not how it is. So triggers, back to triggers. So I feel it bubbling up in me, and I can remove myself now. Now, again, if alcohol is involved, I have a very difficult time removing myself. I have replayed the scenario from last Saturday night in my head millions of times, and I should have done this. I should have said this. I should have walked away sooner. I shouldn't have allowed myself to be in that situation. I should. And if you heard me in another podcast, I was shoulding all over myself all this week. And I didn't want to. It happened. The trigger happened. And I just have to move on from it. I have to acknowledge it. I have to accept my responsibility in it because I have a responsibility in it. And the person who triggered me has a responsibility in it. But I can't make that person see their responsibility. Only they can. I have to get right with myself and hope that person can get right with their selves. And then maybe have a conversation around it instead of just being triggered all the time. So what happens when you're triggered and when you start feeling the way I just described is your amygdala is flooded with hormones and blood and oxygen. So it's firing big time, but your prefrontal cortex is not. So that prefrontal cortex that's responsible for rational thought and good judgment and things like that isn't working at all. It's like dead. So the only thing that's ruling what you say and what you do and who you be are your emotions. And not that there's anything wrong with having emotions, but there's something wrong when you let your emotions rule your mouth and your thoughts and your feelings. You're not using good judgment. You're not being rational. You're not thinking things through. You're word vomiting all over everybody. And that's what needs to change. We need to change how we respond to triggers as a society. We need to change how we respond to people who trigger us, to situations that trigger us. Not 100% of people are ever going to be happy with what's happening in the world. You know, we have these two very different, yet very much the same political parties that cannot talk, that cannot come together. And I would venture a guess that most people aren't way far over here or way far over here. They're somewhere in the middle. Well, why don't we have a middle party? Why don't we have a middle party that ever wins? That's what I want. I'm not going to get into politics because honestly, here's the thing about politics and me. One, I don't research them enough. Two, I don't listen to both sides. I kind of have my own views and my own political, issues that I align with. And so I kind of go towards that side, whichever side that is. I don't vote straight party. That's not me. I look at the candidate and what they're saying and what some of their views are. And I really, when I take all those quizzes on social media, I'm a libertarian. I'm somewhere in the middle. But that's, it's not realistic that the Libertarian Party isn't going to win. And I feel like to change our economy and to change our government and to change what's going on, maybe a third party needs to win. I mean, maybe there's something else. It's not always black and white. And so many people are responding to things like it's 100% black and white. Like that's all it is just black and white. And it's not. And so many people are letting the triggers have the best of them. And it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make me feel good when I'm triggered. That is not who I want to be. And unfortunately, the trigger from last weekend really triggered me this whole week. It made me shorter with my husband. It made me a little bit pissy. It made me just kind of angry and upset and emotional. And I felt a low level of trigger all week. And then Jeremy and I argued 2 nights ago. And, it sets me up for failure when I allow triggers to rule my life. And that's not what I want. I've been there. I've done that. I know what it's like to be triggered all the time. I know what it's like to allow negative triggers to rule my life. It wasn't fun. I didn't feel good about who I was. I didn't feel good about anything. I didn't feel good about my relationship with Jeremy. I was triggered all the time. And it wasn't 100% his fault. It was more me, more because of all the shit in my head, all the stories I would tell myself because of past relationships, because of past stuff that I allowed to influence what I was doing now. Then this was quite a few years ago. I don't do that anymore. I have evolved past all the triggers. No, I haven't. That's a lie. It's not a lie. I'm not lying, but I haven't evolved past all the triggers because I still let them happen. And I know a lot of you do too. So what can you do? So here's the question. What can you do to help with triggers? And it's hard. I mean, I've done a lot of work. I've worked with life coaches. I've worked with other coaches. I'm going through a coaching training program right now where we help reframe triggers. But it's all about reframing triggers. So every single day, I'm going to get my phone out. So I'm going to show you this. Every single day, I do something that with my coaching group is called the Patriot Missile Game. I'm not 100% sure why it's called the Patriot Missile Game. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. It was made by a Canadian, so we could throw that out already. But it's called the Patriot Missile Game. And the object of this game is to reframe triggers. So it's an app on my phone, and every single day I do this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. You can't really see it. Okay, so the first question is, what has happened? What is today's trigger? So what is today's trigger? So you write that out. Good trigger, bad trigger. Trigger doesn't have to be bad. I know when you're first starting this work, trigger typically is bad. Trigger typically is something negative, or you know what? More often than not, if I have a negative trigger, it's in my head. It's something that I feel about myself. It's stories that I'm allowing into my life. And usually they have to do about my body. I'm not slim enough. I'm not strong enough. I have too much cellulite. My butt's too big. My stomach's too big. I have too much arm fat. My chin, I don't know. It's kind of a double chin right now. I'm not liking that. Usually it's stories about myself and stories about my body, or I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't start this business. I can't do this coaching. I can't run my office. I can't have this, or this, because of stories in my head. So typically the triggers are stories in my head. So you write that trigger down. The next thing you do is this person or experience is making you feel what? One word emotions: happy, excited, exhausted, tired, irritated, pissed off, angry, whatever those one word emotions. What is that trigger making you feel? So is it a happy trigger? What's it making you feel? Excited, ready, joyous, joyful, whatever. Or is it a bad trigger? Does it make you feel mad, pissy, angry, irritated, frustrated? What is it? What is it? Then it asks you if this trigger is a positive or a negative emotion. So then you pick that, positive or negative. And then you rate the trigger. And then you release the rage or expressed gratitude. So have you released the rage? So if that trigger is making you feel ragey, have you released that? Have you sat down? Have you went outside and screamed at the top of your lungs? Have you taken 3 deep breaths? Have you allowed yourself and your mind to calm down? Or is it still just mulling it over, still just playing that trigger out? Or have you said thank you to somebody? Have you said thank you to yourself? A lot of times it's thank you to yourself. It's thank you to who you are and how you're showing up in life. So is this trigger about somebody else? What's the opposite of the trigger? What is this evidence to support this opposite story? If you feel something should have happened, do you feel something else should have happened? So consider your following fears. So then they talk about fears and delusions and, why this is showing up in your life. What are you afraid of? Or what are the delusions that are coming up in your life? Close your eyes, feel the emotion, see where the other person is coming from. What are their values? Are you trying to push your values onto somebody else? And if you're trying to push your values onto somebody else, it's not going to work. They're not you. They can't have the same values as you. And then who can you express gratitude for this? What are you going to do? So what are your values? Do you even know your values? One of the exercises I do is figuring out my values and my mission statement. And I'd be happy to do that with people. It's a pretty interesting exercise to figure out your values. Because if you know your values, then you know if something's not in line with your values. So is that trigger in alignment with your values? If it's not, then it's time to do something different. Are these actions in alignment with your values? Is how you're showing up in life, is that in alignment with your values? So my values are connection, impact, and adventure. So I want to have connection with people. I want to have impact with people, and I want to have adventure. So is what I'm doing in alignment with that? If it's not, then it's going to trigger me and I need to rethink that. So what are you noticing? What's the lesson here? So there's always a lesson. Can you see how that negative trigger may be positive? Can you see how having that confrontation with somebody, you could reframe that to make it positive? And if you can't, try to reframe some of these triggers to make them positive. And I know some of you are going to say, I can't reframe that. I can't make it positive. I can't. And I understand it. But can you see how other people's values are different than yours? And if you are triggered because other people are living their values, which aren't in alignment with your values, can you see how that's not something you should really be triggered by? Because they have their own values. They have their own life experiences. They're different than yours, and that's okay. That's what I want to really say today. It's okay to be different. And it's okay to be triggered. But figure out why you're being triggered. Figure out what's going on between your ears. What's going on in your head? There's so much going on right now. Are you allowing yourself to show up angry and pissed off and frustrated because of the state of our economy and the state of the politics and all of that? See, that's one thing I'm not allowing. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm done. I'm out. I've already done my thing. I voted. I did what I did. It's out of my hands. I am not going to participate in what's happening right now in the United States. And there may be a point in time when I have to. There may be a point in time where shit hits a fan and I have to do something. And I have to protect my family, or I have to, put myself out there more. But right now, I don't have to. Right now, I know my values. I know my beliefs. And I voted accordingly to me. But that's not you, maybe, and that's okay. So I'm not going to participate in the anger. I'm not going to participate in the irritation and the mad, the people that are mad, the people who are yelling, the people who are screaming. I'm not going to participate in the narrative. I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to be my own person. And I'm not going to say I have to do this because I believe, or I have to do that because I believe that. No, if I think something is a little fishy, I'm going to research it myself, and I don't care what side it's on. Not everything is political, and everything is being made to be political right now. And I'm not going to participate. I'm just not. And maybe that makes me a bad citizen. I think that makes me actually a person who cares about themselves, which is okay. You need to care about yourself. You need to care about your family. Putting yourself first is okay. And I'm putting my mental health first right now. And I'm okay with that. And maybe that makes me selfish, but, ultimately I have to live with me. Ultimately, I'm stuck in this body. I'm stuck with this mind, and I have to be okay with me. And you have to be okay with you. So, is all the fighting, is that okay with you? Is all the keyboard warriors who are saying mean, nasty things on social media who would probably never say it to somebody's face, is that okay with you? Do you want to participate in that? Reframe your triggers. Figure out what's triggering you. Figure out what it feels like inside when you're triggered, because then it's easier to step back. It's easier to step away. It's easier not to participate when you know what your triggers are. All right, everybody. That's all I have for you today. Stay tuned next week. I don't know what we'll be talking about yet, but it'll be something amazing. So, and as always, find my page on social media. So I have a Facebook group. It is a private group. So if you would like to join, please, it is Transforming Self with Dr. Amelia Rodrock. Helping Women Thrive is the whole name of it, because that's really my goal, is to help women thrive in life, help women take responsibility for their lives, and to figure out what it is they want to do and who they want to be and who they want to show up as in the world, and maybe help them transform some of the shitty stories in their head so they can thrive to their full potential. So find me on social media, find me on Facebook. I have a podcast. So if you just search Amelia Rodrock, you'll find my podcast. Subscribe to that. I put my podcast. Did I say YouTube or podcast? Well, now I'm confused. I have a YouTube. If I said podcast, I mean I have a YouTube. I do have a podcast because you're listening to it, but I have a YouTube channel as well. So Dr. Amelia, or I think it's just Amelia Rodrock. I put my podcast on my YouTube channel, but I also do other videos. I'm trying to do a video daily right now. So I just do little short 5 to 7 minute videos daily about whatever's on my mind. So I hope everybody has a fabulous day. And until next time, be courageous. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. There are many ways to connect with me, and I want to connect with each and every one of you. Facebook seems to be the easiest right now. I have a Facebook page for my podcast, so Transforming Self podcast page, or you can connect with me personally, Amelia Rodrock on Facebook. I also have an Instagram and a YouTube page. So please reach out. I am here for each and every one of you. I want to help every one of you thrive to your full potential.